Welcome r/Prorevenge. Repeatedly blocking my car in private parking? Good luck finding and getting your car out. Not sure if this is petty or pro, but it was certainly creative and extremely funny at the time, so I'll try here. I live in an apartment building which has end-to-end parking for 2 spaces per apartment, and access to the parking levels 1 to 5 are done via a locked automatic roller door which people can only get through if they have a remote for it or sneak through behind someone else. I only have a single car, and sometimes I let my friends park in the space in front of my car if they give me notice, so I generally park at the back of the double space, plus it's easier for my neighbors who have 2 cars. Earlier this year, a random car began parking in front of mine on Friday afternoons, meaning I couldn't go out with my car on Friday nights. Annoying, but not the biggest issue when you live super close to the city. This continued nearly every week over about 5 weeks, when I didn't park my car at the front of the bay, which I began doing, but times I planned to leave the space free for friends coming over, or whatever, the car appeared again. I made repeated attempts to stop this behavior by leaving notes, which escalated into leaving printouts of a photo of the car with the license plate clearly visible and an explanation that, if it happened again, I'd press charges and or have the vehicle towed. Well, it happened again, and this time it was still there Saturday afternoon, when I had been planning on going away with a group of my mates. My guess is, someone went out on Friday, got drunk, and decided to pick up the car later, not concerning themselves with the inconvenience it caused anyone else. It clearly hadn't moved, as my aggressive note telling them to fuck off was still there sitting limply under their wiper blades. Fortunately for me, however, my parents only live 30 minutes away and have a garage where I work on one of my cars that's getting at the tail end of minor restoration. One of the things I use pretty often is a set of vehicle positioning jacks to jam my project car right up against the wall of the garage to minimize the space it takes up. For anyone that doesn't know, vehicle positioning jacks are basically devices that slot under each wheel, then lift the car up on hydraulics so you can freewheel it in any direction. Whilst I hadn't originally gone to retrieve them, when I had to take my project car off them, a bright idea came to my head. None of my mates minded spending an extra hour to screw someone over that had interfered with us, so we grabbed the jacks and went back, propped the car up, and wheeled it out. 6 guys can easily move around a small hatchback, so we pushed across the level slowly and carefully to an area where there isn't parking, but is a load supporting pillar with space enough for a car behind it, in a little section of the garage where it isn't lit and is completely out of the way. Typically there's a guy on my level that parks a motorbike there, but he isn't meant to, and I doubted he minded. We dumped it between the pillar and the wall, with the nose pointing towards the wall. I took back my angry note, the jacks, and we left to enjoy our weekend. When he came back Monday afternoon after the long weekend, the car was still there, which was no real surprise considering there was only about a foot of space for movement between the pillar and car, and another foot or so between the car and the wall. From the fact the front wheels had changed, we are guessing they did try to get it out, unsuccessfully. It eventually went later in the week, though I'm not exactly sure how they managed it. I never saw that car again. TL. Dr. Jackass repeatedly blocked in my car by illegally parking in my private space, including over a long weekend when I had plans to go away with a group of mates. We used vehicle positioning jacks to move the car and place it between a pillar and a wall, making it extremely hard to get out from a secluded, dark and out of the way corner of the parking level where most people wouldn't have thought to look. Info Edit 1. As requested. My shitty manuscript paint graphic, made in GIMP, because way to break the mold, to explain the positioning. Now with animations. For the record, I'm pretty sure we spun it around half a dozen times whilst moving it, because none of my mates had ever seen these, of which vehicle positioning jacks move cars around. I probably could have done it myself, since I know how they tend to move, but 2 novices could easily have done it extremely easily. Plus, there is something weirdly amusing about dancing a car around as it slides in directions it was never meant to, and that you only see in car crash dashcam videos from Russia. Info Edit 2. For anyone who doesn't understand how parking in my building works, it's like this. 2 car spaces per apartment, but 1 car goes in front of the other. Hope that clears up why I couldn't just move my car out and leave his where it was. Info edit 3. I'm an Australian. For anyone who missed my username. Info edit 4. A few people have asked why I don't simply park at the front of my spaces. I don't always drive to work because I live close enough so my car stays home. My mates will need to go into city every so often. Usually happens randomly like once a week. So if I leave my car at the front of the bay, I'd either need to go home to move it or tell my mates they're shit out of luck. I'd rather not take away a benefit to my friends all because the occasional jackass and single persistent jackass wants to freeload too. At least my mates buy me beer or pay for my gas occasionally. Plus the person parking in my space illegally is the one doing something wrong, not me. Info edit 5. Police also will not help unless the vehicle has been there long enough to be considered abandoned. However, cite that I'm within my right to have the vehicle moved or towed, which as I've pointed out won't happen because of the difficulty unless I pay a ridiculous removal fee which is greater than the impound charge. Final miscredit. Thank you to everyone who has enjoyed reading this, laughed, upvoted, downvoted, commented and been kind enough to gift a silver or gold. First time having any of this attention, so it's a bit of a shock for me, especially over something I didn't think much of after. I never would have thought 7 mates desperate to get away for the weekend would bring so much internet praise. I mean, this may seem silly, but I really am extremely appreciative of the silver and gold gifts from those of you who have given them. So again, thanks everyone for the upvotes, comments, gifts, and chuckles I'm sure some of you had. I'm just stuck thinking about the owner coming back with mates. I know I parked it here, are you sure? Well, yeah, because the guy who's been leaving me notes not to park here's car is right there. Wait, you were told not to park here? Oh, shit. I still want to know how long it took them to find the car, if they found it while looking around the other parking spaces, whether they went calling impound lots. So many questions. This actually has happened to me. Twice. Once in high school I was late and parked in front of the garage door for the shop. Of course, that day they needed to get something in or out so they just moved my car against a fence nearby. And then a couple years later, I was visiting a friend in the city and he told me his parking stall number. But he didn't ever use it and didn't tell me. That was more of a guess of which stall was his. When we came back my car had been moved with a pretty polite note on the windshield. Both cars were small and light, so you wouldn't even need rollers if you had a couple people to pick up the end. Each time it was disorienting for a minute, staring where I knew I left it, before I'd finally snap out of it and scan the area and see where it got moved to. I had a person that liked to park in the road across the end of my driveway and block me in. I left notes. I marked the driveway with cones, and I blocked the entire driveway with a sawhorse. Nothing stopped this stranger. One day, I was sick of it. I took some freezer burned fish, tossed it in a Tupperware container, and left it outside my back door. The next weekend, the car was back. I took my blender outside, mixed up my rancid fish with some hot water, and poured the slurry into every crack I could find on that car. They never parked there again. Note, I was 21, immature, and angry. I have grown as a person since then. Someone had been parking their car in my sister's driveway. We use the same kind of dollies you're talking about to roll it in front of the nearest fire hydrant. One anonymous call to the police and now there's a shat had parking, towing, and impound fees to pay before he could get his Beamer back. A friend had someone park his car in his driveway, completely blocking entry and exit. Several friends helped him pick up car and move it 8 feet to the right, putting front wheels on one side of ditch and rear wheels on the other, and not enough room to move in any direction. Then called another friend at tow company, explained situation. Guy had to pay $300 to get flatbed to come get him out. This reminds me of a funny story from my teenage years. When I was about 14 years old I had 3 close friends which I spent the majority of my time. We were notorious for causing trouble in ways that made us laugh. and usually meant we were running for our lives from whatever evil deed we did. Now these things were usually benign in the sense that they didn't directly harm anyone, though I'd be lying if I said our pranks didn't piss people off. When we weren't up to hijinks, we sometimes would walk the neighborhood talking about life or whatever for hours. One day a lifted truck started showing up in our neighborhood, which would speed down the suburban streets and sometimes swerve toward us when we were walking on the side of the street, making us skedaddle out of the way. We hated this truck because we had some close calls. We never did anything to the driver, but I'm sure one of us flipped him off once because of this driving behavior. In our teenage eloquence, we named the driver King Need. One night one of my friends and I were walking on the side of the street and this truck careened toward us from behind and missed me by inches. He came so close he ran his tires on the gutter a few feet in front of me before turning right and stopping in the middle of the road. 3 guys who were at least 19 or 20 jumped out in the dark and started challenging us and calling us all kinds of names. King D was holding a gun or similar looking weapon. In the dark it was partly obscured. The two of us just kept our head down and hurried by. After all, we were 14, outnumbered, and they had at least one weapon. Over the next few months we avoided this truck like the plague. One summer weekend night we were walking again around midnight or so and came across the truck parked on the street without its owner and the windows down. There was a party going on in the backyard of the house it was parked at, but no one was out front. Our underdeveloped frontal lobes knew this was our chance to finally get back at King D, but we had to hurry. We had been drinking tons of caffeinated soda to stay awake that night and knew what to do. We each took our turns pissing all over his seat, steering wheel, and dashboard as fast as we could. The end product was a thorough job. And then we ran like hell out of there to whichever friend's house we were staying the night at that night. The pissing and running were an intense 5 to 10 minutes or so, but we weren't seen, and we had our revenge. Shortly after, King D stopped coming around the neighborhood. I don't think it was us, because he probably would have kicked our ass, but more likely he moved on. The adult me knows our prank was a very bad risk, and not worth it, but glad we got away with it just the same. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.